Hey, what is up, everybody? We are Rats on Film, and welcome to a new podcast where a group of movie lovers, or film rats if you will, rank movies. The goal of this show is going to be to create ranking lists of movies based on directors, based on franchises, based on genres. Whatever you can think of, we'll probably do a list for it at some point. Be sure to follow us over on letterboxd.com at ratsonfilmpod. We'll be posting all the lists we make there. You can leave a comment, let us know what you think of our list, let us know what lists you'd like to see us make in the future. Now, for our first episode, in honor of the Oscars that just passed, we're going to be doing our favorite films of 2023. And on the show with me today, I have Jordan.
Hi.
Buck.
Hi there.
And I am your host, Xander. Welcome to the show, everybody.
You know, I really don't identify as a rat. I'm like 30% mouse, so I really kind of find the name offensive, but as long as everybody's welcome at this podcast table, I'll be happy.
You're not a film rat?
No, film mouse.
I'm 100% rat.
Yeah, I'm a rat for sure. My Letterboxd profile has said I'm just a little film rat for quite some time now. I think you, Jordan, wrote that when I first made it.
I did.
That was the big inspo for the name of this podcast. So before we recorded, we all got together and we decided separately that we were going to come up with our top threes each of the year. And from that, we're going to create a top 5 list. So it's going to be the best 5 of the year from 9 that we selected. So who wants to start with their top 3 for the year?
Well, first, I think we should acknowledge the fact that there were a lot of good movies this year.
Oh, yeah.
Just because there were.
Yeah, I think it was a good year.
No, I think it was an excellent year. I had a really hard time picking my top 3 movies of the year. I feel like I hear this on so many podcasts and YouTube things, but it's like, these are my favorite movies of the year. They're not necessarily the best, even though Oppenheimer is the best movie of the year. But they're not. The other two are just things I liked a lot.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, that's a good disclaimer for us. This is just our group
faves.
Of people's opinions, our faves, like the stuff that we liked. We try and see a lot of stuff, but definitely didn't see everything that came out last year. So this is like of the stuff that we saw, like what our favorites were.
Yeah, and our credentials are we all went to film school together. So we're educated is really what it is.
Edit that part out.
Yeah, I feel like that's almost like that's like a discredit. Okay, so who wants to start with their top 3 for the year? Buck, you kind of teased yours already, so do you want to start?
Yeah, so because I already spoiled it a little bit, I'll just say it. My number one's Oppenheimer, because I just think Oppenheimer is one of the best movies of the last 10 years. I think it's Nolan at the top of his game doing all of the stuff that he does best, but it's also his most human movie. The character work is amazing. Oppenheimer is like a full tour de force. Everything's firing on all cylinders. I love it. My number 2 is Godzilla -1, and it's because it's the most movie I've seen in a long time. It literally gives me everything I want out of a movie. I felt a range of emotions. There's characters I cared about. The music's awesome. It's a ton of fun. I love like how much of it's like the only good Spielberg pastiche I've ever seen. And I think it's just so much fun from top to bottom. It's a movie. It's everything you want from a movie. And then my number 3, which I had a really hard time picking, and again, this is what just stuff I like, is Mission Impossible 7. And it's funny as I'm saying that right now, I was about to call it Rogue Nation and Fallout, and I had to remember it's Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, though the Part 1 has been removed. You know what it is? I love the Mission Impossible movies. I just think it's an excellent action movie. And I think like there's so many set pieces in it, the car chase through Rome, the bicycle jump, the train, that are unparalleled by anything coming out. It's just what I want to go see in movies. That's the one I have a harder time arguing, but it's what I want from a movie, and the action's unbelievable.
Jordan, do you want to give your top 3?
Sure. Kind of anticlimactic, but I agree with Buck that Oppenheimer was the best movie of the year for me. Agree with what Buck said. Everyone was at the top of their game. I'm also a huge Cillian Murphy fan, and it was really fun to see him on the biggest screen possible. I think he did an amazing job at encompassing such an interesting character. We see a lot of the emotional conflict in his performance, which, I don't know, it really stood out to me. I think the cinematography, the parallel storylines, the black and white, the fission and fusion, I thought was just an interesting way to tell a historical story, and I think there was a lot of craft and effort and care that went into that movie. Number 2 for me would be Asteroid City, Wes Anderson's most recent film. I am a big Wes Anderson fan, and I think that in the same way that Buck said Christopher Nolan was being Christopher Nolan at his best, I think this was Wes at his best, and I know people will argue about this. Some people are saying that Wes Anderson in this movie was the most Wes Anderson in a bad way, but I think he really honed in on what he does well. I think the performances are great. I think Jason Schwartzman is amazing. Scarlett Johansson is amazing. The whole cast of characters. Just what I want to go to the theater for. I got it in that movie. And then number 3 for me would be Saltburn. Again, amazing performances. I love Barry Keoghan. I love Jacob Elordi. I think they both were really great. I think the whole cast of the family is awesome. Rosamund Pike, gorgeous. Love her. It was just an incredibly sexy movie. It was a movie that really didn't give a fuck, and I think that we need more movies like that. Like, I think Emerald Fennell wasn't taking herself too seriously, which I know some people criticize the plot for that, but I think it was just a fun, sexy, good time. And again, that's why I want to go to the theater. So
All right. Yeah, this is not going to be that interesting. Oppenheimer for me is my number 1. We'll gush about it a little bit more in a second because I think we all know where it's going to go on the list. So for me, number 2 would be Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Huge Spider-Man fan. Love the first movie. I remember when the first one was coming out and it was weird and nobody knew what it was. And I feel like it's one of the most like important animated movies to come out of all time.
Ever.
Yeah,
ever.
of all time.
Yeah.
And then somehow they one-upped it in the sequel. I really have a hard time deciding if I think that Across is better. And I feel like the only reason I don't think so is because it's not a full movie. It has, I don't know, what I would call middle movie syndrome, like Empire Strikes Back. It ends and you know there's going to be more story. It doesn't feel like a conclusion, but it's incredible. It's like one of the most visually amazing things I've ever watched. And then my third favorite, not mind-blowing, but just like incredible for different reasons, was Past Lives. I really love a small contained drama sometimes. And I feel like the thematics of Past Lives are really, really interesting. Maybe this is a weird take, but I kind of feel like Past Lives, it reminds me a little bit of if you started La La Land at the end, where you have these two people who thought that they were right for each other, and then life took them in different directions, and then seeing that kind of play out. And I think that there's something really universal about feeling not even necessarily like regret, but just about like the what ifs of life. And so, yeah, I think the performances are great in it, and just the themes of that movie are really good.
All good movies.
So how are we gonna? So we're just agreeing. I think if you guys are listening, you all figured out Oppenheimer's our number 1. Are we just gonna talk about that for a second?
Yeah, we can gush a little bit more about Oppenheimer. For me, the thing with Oppenheimer was Jordan and you, Buck, actually, we've all seen it 3 times now since it came out. And it has this really weird quality for me where every single time I've seen it, it makes me break down and cry. And I talked to you about it after we saw it like the 3rd time, Jordan. And I was like, it's weird because it's not even moments that are sad particularly. Like there are sad moments and there are moments of like intense drama, but it's not even always those moments that makes me do it. And you said that you feel like it's just a movie that overwhelms you with so much. I don't think all film or all art needs to do that, but there is something to be said about art that can like really hit you at your core. That's, I don't know, really powerful and cool.
No, I think I agree with that. I think Oppenheimer is just a beautiful like two-hander character study of both. I think when I say it's mostly a Oppenheimer character study, and then Robert Downey Jr.'s character, whose name escapes me right now. The Robert Downey Jr. Strauss, thank you. Strauss is like, the Strauss stuff is my favorite. I just think I've never seen a biopic be more successful, and I've never seen a like storytelling technique of how Oppenheimer can jump time and space and location, and you never feel out of place. And I think like it's covering such massive stuff, it's covering so many characters, it's covering everything, but yet you always understand what's going on, and you feel the right things at the right time. And I think that alone just makes it a cinematic achievement.
You and I are both editors, Buck. And yeah, I feel like the editing, like Jennifer Lame, it's unreal in Oppenheimer how she and Chris Nolan were able to like weave the story. There's so much complex things going on, and you never like get lost. You're never confused. It's really, really crazy.
No, she like revolutionized. I don't even know if montage is the right word. It's because the whole movie is almost montage. It's just so eloquent at giving you the right information at the right time and mixing that with music and the visuals and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with the entire cast, I think the casting team did a really good job. And I know Christopher Nolan has spoken about how he wanted to cast people who audiences would recognize in some of the minor roles because everyone involved in this story was influential in history and basically had their own claim to fame, so to say. So I think that was really interesting, and I do think everyone brought their A game. I love Florence. I think she was great, but like Alden, but I think he's really great in his role.
Oh, absolutely.
I just feel like the cast killed it, and the filmmakers and the craftspeople and everyone on the movie like understood what movie they were making, and I think everyone was really intentional and passionate about it, and I think that shows. And also I just think it's an important movie, not only historically obviously, but like it's kind of a mirror as just like a human being, like the potential of human beings and human destruction and the capabilities that we all have. And I think if you look at the movie, you're watching this character study of Oppenheimer, but you're also seeing yourself reflected back and seeing pros and cons of what it means to be human.
All right. Well, shall we move on to picking number 2? Is there any last words on Oppenheimer?
No, I mean, I feel like
I think we all just liked it.
Yeah,
we liked
yeah,
it for
we
the
think
same
we think it's great,
and different reasons.
But interestingly, we have no other overlap for any of our top 3s.
There's like a part of me that just wants to argue right now that Past Lives should be number 2, even though it's not on my list at all.
I mean, we got to start somewhere. So you want to start with that as Past Lives as number 2?
Yeah, I mean, I just watched Past Lives recently, and if we're talking about like Oppenheimer being number 1 for just being film at the top of its game, I feel like out of all the movies we've talked about, the only other one that I feel like is the best at being itself is Past Lives. Like, Past Lives to me is a pretty flawless film in terms of the emotions, the structure, the execution. Like, I don't think I've seen a movie executed like in using like the narrative. It teeters on like It's a Wonderful Life story structure, where it's like half of the movie is set up for literally the last 40 minutes. And it jumps around, but it's so good at making you feel what the characters are feeling at the right moments, but doing it subtly. And I think for that alone, out of because I've seen all these, and it's like I like some of them better, but I think it's just the most successful at being itself.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, I do agree. I think in the way that you were comparing it to La La Land before, I feel like it did something that we've seen before, but in a way that we've never seen before. And I think that, I don't know, I there's like a quote or something, when you get more specific, you actually get more broad, and people relate to things when you tell specific stories. And I think that the cultural specificity in the movie actually, like, as someone who does not relate in that way, it made it more relatable. And I think that was successful also. But I think the performances are awesome. I think Greta was great.
They also filmed at one of my favorite bars in New York City, the Holiday Cocktail Lounge. And honestly, that gets it a lot of points for me.
That scene is like my favorite scene of the movie. I think the way that the performances there, like Teo and Greta, are so good. But the way that they staged that with her husband sitting there, and it's like this wide shot at the bar, and he's like sitting, and they're not inviting him into the conversation, and even if they were, he couldn't be there. It's like one of the most awkward situations I can like think of ever being on film. Very interpersonal, and it's so interesting to watch. I feel like there's so many layers going on there.
8,000 layers of connection, would you say? And what better way to keep somebody on the hook by being like, listen, I really can't, but next time after I die, just keep looking out for me, because that time it's gonna work out. I usually fucking hate cold opens, but I love the cold open of Past Lives with this omnipresent couple voyeuring the drinks at the holiday cocktail lounge and being like, what's the dynamic here? Like, I think that it's such a successful opening, and I'm really curious if that was scripted or if it came in the edit and like where the hell it came from.
Yeah,
I
interesting.
love that opening so much because it does a really good job of I think what the movie does so well in the screenwriting is that it allows you to live in scenes, but it sets you up for the scene so quickly. Like there's just so many elements in the film where storytelling is told so concisely and so beautifully that it lets you just get to the action.
Yeah, I mean, Celine Song killed it. I also think it's very promising that this is her first feature. So I'm very curious to see what kind of stuff she does next.
Yeah.
Do you guys agree that the reason why I know it's not my pick, but I'm just the way we spoke about Oppenheimer, I'm like, yeah, Past Lives to me should be number 2 on this list. Do you agree with that?
Does anybody have a movie that they feel strongly should challenge Past Lives for the second spot?
I do have a film that I think should be in the second position, and it's not one of mine. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is a contender because I think that out of all the movies that we've said, I think they're all great, but I do think that Spider-Verse is more influential within its own medium than maybe any of the others.
But it's like half a movie.
I think that's debatable. I get that.
My issue with my issue with Spider-Verse, and it's funny, if it was almost just the Gwen Stacy stuff up the top, like the opening Gwen Stacy stuff.
It's like unreal.
It's unbelievable.
The cold open like blew my fucking mind when I watched it, and I like it like ended, and I was like, that was only like the open of the movie. Like that's insane.
Yeah, I feel that way too. It's like that was beautiful. The animation there is absolutely perfect. I have relation to that story. Like I get it. It's. And the characters are so real, the action is unbelievable, but at the end of the day, for me, this movie left me so unsatisfied because I don't know exactly where it's going. And I feel like, not to say I didn't know where, like there's not stuff I love in it, I just don't want to make it number 2 for that reason. I'll give it 3 or 4 though, maybe.
I think that what I would say though for me is I do kind of get what you're saying, and I said that in my little intro for it. Like it has a little bit of middle movie syndrome, but I actually think it combats it well from a character perspective. From a plot perspective, like absolutely, it's not resolved, and there's a whole Spider-Verse of possibilities that they could do. But I think Miles's character specifically, he has like a very complete arc to me.
Yeah, I think definitely from a character perspective, and I think both on the animation side and on the voice performance side, we have some of the best performances in animation, like facial expressions on the animated characters, but also the performances like Hobie and Miles and Gwen.
Good.
They're all so good and memorable. It's just fun. I totally understand the criticism. I hear that it's not a full movie, but I've seen it multiple times and I'm never not satisfied. And I feel like a lot of other movies that are part 1s or part 2s or whatever, sometimes they're less satisfying for some reason.
So you guys,
but I get it.
So you guys bumping me with this one? Is that's what I'm hearing? It seems like you two
well,
are agreeing.
I have to bump you because my top 3 was Spider-Verse above Past Lives, and I love both of them. But like I do think I edge out Spider-Verse, so like I'm gonna vote Spider-Verse above it for 2. I think if Jordan's on my side, if I got
that means I get bumped on this one. I hate this.
Yeah,
I don't like this format at all.
I would love to hear an argument, though, for Godzilla -1 for number 2, because I also loved that movie.
My argument for Godzilla -1 is pretty much what I said in my intro. It is like Oppenheimer. It's a movie about war that's superhuman, but it's also not superhuman, but like, you know what I meant, like very human. It's also a movie about war that's like a blockbuster. And just the direction in -1, I think -1 has the most successful tonal balance out of all the movies we're talking about here. Like I teared up during Godzilla -1. I can't say that I teared up during any of these other movies. And it's a Godzilla movie with a sequence where they try to get Godzilla on a raft and sink him and then raise him up really quickly so he implodes. And I cried during that movie.
Yeah, I mean, I guess also from the movies that we've talked about so far, and also all of them pretty much it's really the only movie with like a hopeful ending, like a fully hopeful ending.
Yeah.
That's not ambiguous and not.
Wait, Godzilla's growing in the ocean at the end of this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I still feel like that the human story is hopeful.
It is. It's a really hopeful story. It's a story about change, like the power, like people can change. It's really beautiful.
Here's my thing with Godzilla. Godzilla probably is my number 4. This is gonna sound like a criticism, but I actually think this is amazing about the movie. Godzilla -1 is such a basic story. It's like, you know, you have elements like Grave of the Fireflies in there. Like, there's a bunch of different things that I'm like, oh, I've seen this before. But somehow they absolutely fucking crush it with getting you to care about the characters, even when it's something very basic in terms of like its plot structure. And I think that's really impressive about the movie.
I would also like love to highlight that the budget was only $10 to $12 million, which is insane because that is about the same budget, if not lower, than Saltburn. And like when you the production scale and scope
it looks
of
incredible.
Godzilla -1 for that budget, again compared to Oppenheimer, even like with an insane budget, they pulled off a lot. And I think that sometimes limited resources fuel creativity, and I feel like Godzilla -1 is a really good example of that working.
Yeah, it's Grave of the Fireflies meets Star Wars. Like, I don't know how you pull the hell off, but they did, and I love it. And like, out of all of these movies on the list, I'm like, Godzilla -1 will be the one I watch the most for years to come. All right, so what are we giving our number 2 to?
Does anyone think that any of the other movies that have been talked about deserves to be ahead of any of these on our list?
I love Asteroid City, but I don't think it's going to be on our top 5.
You know, I don't even really, I'm not a huge Wes Anderson fan. I'm like kind of hit or miss on his films. I didn't love The French Dispatch, like of his recent ones, but I did really like Asteroid City. I thought Asteroid City was really great, and I thought there was a lot of cool stuff in it.
Let's go down the line here. What is our number 2? Is anything gonna go? Because like the way I kind of feel right.
I'm gonna say Spider-Verse.
I'm going to vote Past Lives.
I would happily vote Past Lives over Spider-Verse.
Okay, so Past Lives is our number 2. I'm fine with that. I love Past Lives.
So then is Spider-Man number 3 or is Godzilla number 3? I say Godzilla's number 3.
I vote Spider-Man.
I also vote Spider-Man.
All right, so fine. Spider-Man's number 3. Then Godzilla's number 4.
Then Godzilla's going to be number 4. Okay, so now for the last.
Did we think it was going to be a fight for number 5?
So we've got Saltburn, we've got Asteroid City, and we've got Mission Impossible.
I think Saltburn out of the 3 that are left.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think Saltburn is, while it's derivative and there are other stories like it, I think it's unique. I think it's not like a lot of other movies that have come out recently. I think it's one of the first 2014 period pieces, which is cool, or 2006, whatever it actually is. I think that's fun as someone who was alive during that time. I think the performances are really good. I think the production design is really awesome. I think the cinematography is amazing. There are some really awesome shots in the film that I think the movie is vibey, it's aesthetic, and I think that their filmmaking techniques actually mimic that. And I understand why people don't like that, but I do think that's what they were going for, and I think for me it was successful. I don't think it was necessarily a story about commenting on class inequality. I think it was more a story of obsession and being an insane
Jealousy.
person. Yeah,
I don't really get where anyone takes the movie as like I think the commentary is there, but I don't think it's a serious movie. Like I think it's a ton of fun. I really
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Well, and I think Emerald was playing off of that expectation of the audience, and I think people fell into it. But like Barry's character, you're supposed to think he is poor, and then he's not. Like, that is the point. Like, he's not even poor, he's upper middle class, and even he is so obsessed with his family. Like, it wasn't necessarily a comment about the inequality. It was more of a comment about one person's desire and how far they would go.
Yeah, I mean, you said the vibes thing. We talk about movies, the 3 of us, a lot together, and one of the things that we talk about that we're all very big on is like sometimes you just rank a movie highly based on vibes. And I feel like Saltburn, the vibes are really good and it's fun.
My only critique on the movie is, but I think it's kind of big. I'm not gonna probably argue it away from the 5th spot. I think it's out of the rest of these. I think it's like such a solid movie. I just feel like saving the twist for the end really divots the ending.
But I kind of get it, because I feel like the movie hides his intentions behind, you think it's like a romance thing, like you think he's trying to get power from Jacob in like a romantic attention way, not like I want your life way. And I feel like it is kind of a crisp shift when it is actually realized, but I don't know, it'd be interesting to see a different edit, or like if there were different clues in the first half.
I just think you have a choice here. You can be dancing through Saltburn naked alone to murder on the dance floor, or you can be dancing through Saltburn naked with Rosamund Pike to murder on the dance floor. And that's where the movie really lost its believability for me. What?
Rosamund Pike is...
I said that, yeah. He made the wrong choice.
She's so
yeah, that's where I just
movie.
stopped believing the character arcs, really. Right in that moment. I was like, I don't know. But no, I love how weird it is.
When he sees her at the coffee shop, you were like, he gets everything he wants.
I kind of was like, oh yeah, this movie makes so much sense to me now.
We talked a little bit about Asteroid City. Do you want to touch on Mission Impossible, Buck?
I have such a weird... Because me and Xander talked about this a little bit before, and it's like, when I was thinking, like, because I'm a huge action movie nut, and I know Xander is too.
Yeah, me too. We see very like big on the Mission Impossibles and like Jackie Chan.
Yeah, we're just
stuff like
we're
that.
big believers in like action cinema being it, like action sequences being its own art form. I feel like.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I had a really hard time choosing between John Wick Chapter 4 and this, because I think John Wick Chapter 4, like that would be a big honorable mention for me from last year, is a wonderful action movie. And I think if you compare it to Mission Impossible 7, I think John Wick 4 is much better at being a John Wick movie than Mission Impossible 7 is at being a Mission Impossible movie. However, there's just so much cool stuff in that movie, and the action directing is so clever and so smart and so detailed, and it does things I've never seen before.
The last third is very good.
Yeah, it rules.
And then I love the way it shoots dialogue sequences, which I know I'm alone in, but every dialogue sequence should be crazy close-up Dutch angles with that jump the line absurdly. I think that's the only reason why the movie's believable, because the movie is basically telling you in the filmmaking, oh, this is ridiculous. That being said, it's not my favorite Mission Impossible. There's a lot of messy stuff in it.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at with it. Like I'm with you, Buck. I'm a big Mission Impossible fan. Fallout by far the best. And it's not to say that the new one is bad. It just is a little bit more messy.
Yeah, and it killed Rebecca Ferguson, so
yeah, big misplay.
I hear what you're saying about Mission Impossible, but I just will never agree. And I understand that you feel the same way about Asteroid City. So I am not a huge action cinema person. I'm not a huge James Bond, spy thriller, Mission Impossible person. So I don't know. I will say I thought John Wick 4 was good.
So can we just say John Wick 4 is better than Asteroid City then? Can I just change my vote?
Okay. No, so are we in agreement then for number 5? It's gonna be Saltburn.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay. So just to recap for everybody, top 5 as decided by Jordan, Buck, and myself for the year of 2023. Again, tons of great movies. These are just our favorites. Oppenheimer, number 1. Past Lives, number 2. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, number 3. Godzilla -1, number 4. And Saltburn, number 5. Buck kind of touched on this a little bit. One of the last thing we wanted to do to cap off is, does anybody want to give a shout out to like an honorable mention that like almost made their list, or that was another movie they really loved that isn't quite like the fave, but they just thought was great?
Obviously Barbie.
I love Barbie, yeah. I mean, so much has been said about Barbie in the world, but I love it. I think it was so fun. It was well performed. It was well designed. It was well directed, and it, more than anything, was like so influential and impactful in the world, which I think was cool.
Yeah, Barbie definitely has, we talked about it already, but the vibes check. Like the vibes in Barbie are really good. There's a lot of really great world building and stuff like that that's very specific to Barbie that works really well, and it really shouldn't. I mean, I think probably myself included, when they like said they were going to make a Barbie movie, you're like a corporate cash grab for IP written all over it. But they did a really good job using the source material to make something that was just like very fun and enjoyable to watch, but also had some really great themes going on in it.
Yeah, and it's just fun and it's funny, and I feel like it's a really good just broad appeal comedy, which I feel like is really rare nowadays for some reason. And like I could watch Barbie any day of the week and have a blast. But Barbie would probably be in my top 5 because it would eke out Spider-Verse definitely.
Barbie might make my top 5. It might be the 5th spot for me. It's definitely my top 10 for the year. Yeah.
Barbie I feel like would definitely be in my top 5.
A movie that I feel like got forgotten, and I think it was this year, was Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. I feel like that movie was just, I don't know, I feel like it got no attention, and I thought it was
I've been meaning to see that. I haven't seen that, which I feel bad about. I really want to see that.
It's fun. It's like one of those movies when you watch and you're just like, it made me feel good. It was cute. And I feel like it came and went, but I loved it. So that's mine.
Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to the first episode of Rats on Film. Please follow us over on Letterboxd. We'll be posting this list as well as all the future lists we make on there at Rats on Film Pod. Let us know what your favorite movies of 2023 were. Is there anything we missed? Is there anything you disagree with? And let us know what movies you'd like us to talk about in the future and do lists for. If you liked the show, tell a friend about it. Leave a like, rate it 5 stars, whatever the things that everyone always tells you to do on podcasts. It really helps us out. And yeah, we'll be back soon to talk about more movies. Thanks so much for listening, everybody.
Because we're just a bunch of movie rats.
Shoo shoo, wow wow wow.
Film rats.
Is it? Uh-oh.
Xander, can you just do that thing that like songs that don't have endings do and just slowly fade us out? As opposed to having a sharp ending, just like slowly...